6:30 p.m., the engine is off. You are parked in your own driveway, staring blankly at the steering wheel. The house is just 10 feet away, but you cannot bring yourself to open the car door. You feel an overwhelming, suffocating weight pressing against the back of your eyes. Society calls this laziness. Your family might call it emotional detachment, but they are absolutely wrong. You're not avoiding your life. Your prefrontal cortex is currently paralyzed by a highly toxic buildup called decision residue. Every single choice you made today, from answering a mundane email to navigating traffic, left behind a microscopic layer of metabolic waste inside your skull. By the time evening arrives, this chemical sludge has completely suffocated your neural pathways. This is the exact reason why your exhausted mind spirals into a chaotic overthinking loop the second you try to relax. You cannot just shake this off with positive thinking. In this video, I'm going to show you a silent 4-minute mental vacuum ritual. It is a precise biological switch designed to physically flush this toxic residue out of your brain forever. You have been relentlessly conditioned to believe that the cure for a long day is active relaxation. The modern wellness industry preaches that you should decompress by instantly shifting gears into something enjoyable. You drag your heavy limbs into the house, drop your keys, and immediately try to force a seamless transition into family life. You ask about everyone's day. You turn on a podcast to drown out the silence. Or you collapse onto the couch and mindlessly scroll through social media feeds while a TV show blares in the background. You deeply believe that this rapid consumption of entertainment will somehow wash away the exhaustion and reset your mental state. Wrong, that is the most destructive psychological myth ever aggressively marketed to the working adult. What society calls relaxing, evolutionary biology classifies as a catastrophic data overload on a system that is already experiencing a severe systemic crash. You're not unwinding. You're brutally forcing a flooded biological hard drive to process a massive influx of new external stimuli. Let me completely dismantle this dangerous illusion for you right now. Entertainment is absolutely not neurological rest. Your brain does not differentiate between the stress of a high-stakes corporate meeting and the flashing lights of a comedy show on a screen. Every single word you hear on that podcast, every rapidly changing pixel you process on your phone, and every forced social interaction you engage in requires a massive expenditure of metabolic energy. Your prefrontal cortex has already spent the last 10 hours executing complex algorithms, suppressing emotional outbursts, and calculating social risks. It is completely bankrupt. When you attempt to cure this profound exhaustion by introducing more noise, you're essentially pouring gasoline onto a raging electrical fire. The heavy, apathetic numbness you feel during family dinners is not a sign that you're a cold or emotionally unavailable partner. It is a highly sophisticated mechanical defense mechanism. Your autonomic nervous system is actively initiating a forced shutdown protocol to protect your higher reasoning centers from irreversible burnout. You have been drowning in guilt, silently judging yourself for being a bad parent or a distant spouse, when the truth is that your brain is just desperately trying to block out the noise so it can physically survive the evening. The experts told you to distract yourself with hobbies or a glass of wine to take the edge off, but distraction is just another exhausting form of cognitive labor. You do not need to be entertained, and you certainly do not need to try harder to be present. You're fighting a brutal physical battle that psychology and positive thinking simply cannot solve. We must drop the behavioral theories right now and look directly at the horrifying biological reality happening beneath your scalp. Because the crushing pressure behind your eyes is not just a metaphor for a bad mood. It is an actual toxic physical substance pooling inside the architecture of your brain. The psychological advice ends here. Now, we must forcefully enter the microscopic laboratory of your own anatomy. Forget your emotional exhaustion, erase your psychological identity. We are diving directly into the microscopic architecture of your frontal lobe. Look at the synaptic gaps. Millisecond zero. You read a mundane email, a neuron fires, an electrical impulse jumps the gap. A simple decision is made, but look intensely at what is left behind. Every single time a nerve cell communicates, it excretes a microscopic drop of metabolic waste, glutamate, adenosine, toxic cellular ash. At 8 a.m., the neural network is perfectly clean. The electrical signals move with flawless precision. By 2:15 p.m., a sticky, viscous chemical sludge begins to coat the delicate pathways. You ignore it. You drink caffeine. You force another decision. By 6:30 p.m., the accumulation is absolutely catastrophic. Your synapses are literally drowning in a thick physical mud. The glial cells, the biological janitors of your brain, are completely deactivated while you're awake and processing data. The cerebrospinal fluid cannot flow. The electrical signals can no longer pass through cleanly. The mechanical friction is immense. The neural tissue begins to dangerously overheat. This is the exact physical origin of your crushing brain fog. It is not sadness. It is not a lack of motivation. It is severe localized chemical suffocation. The intense pressure you feel behind your eyes is the actual physical weight of tens of thousands of unflushed micro-decisions pressing against your cranial nerves. You try to process one more simple question from your spouse. The signal attempts to fire. It hits the dense toxic sludge. It violently scatters. Your working memory instantly crashes. The autonomic nervous system detects this critical cellular poisoning. It initiates an immediate, non-negotiable emergency protocol. Motor functions are heavily suppressed. The language center is forcibly disconnected. You sit entirely frozen in your car seat, staring blankly at the dashboard. Society calls this an emotional breakdown. Science calls it a highly successful thermal shutdown. The engine is completely clogged. The biological machine is actively paralyzing your physical limbs to prevent you from generating any more toxic metabolic waste. You're completely and utterly innocent. You're simply being held hostage by the rigid mechanical limits of your own neurotransmitters. That relentless overthinking loop at night is just the sound of a suffocated engine desperately trying to spark under a heavy layer of chemical ash. Stop calling yourself a failure. You are witnessing a flawless masterpiece of biological preservation. But this incredibly cruel design, this absolute inability to flush the toxic waste while your eyes are open, did not just magically appear out of nowhere today. The blueprint for this easily clogged neurological engine was certainly not drafted in a modern corporate office. To understand why your advanced brain completely lacks a daytime cleaning mechanism, we must shatter this microscopic lens. We must violently pull the camera back, rip through the concrete walls of your suburban house, and plummet backward into the brutal, unforgiving history of human architecture and primal survival. Let us completely shatter the microscopic lens, ripping the camera out of your driveway, tearing through the concrete foundations of modern cities, and accelerating backward through the vast corridors of time. We fly past the suffocating urban grids of the Industrial Revolution, aggressively rewinding the evolutionary clock by 200,000 years. Welcome to the vast, open plains of the Pleistocene savanna. Here, a high-stakes hunt has just concluded. The ancient brain of our ancestor is heavily saturated with the exact same toxic metabolic waste you possess today. Every critical survival decision left a thick layer of chemical sludge in their prefrontal cortex. But watch carefully what happens next. There is no instant transition. There is a 10-mile walk back to the tribe. For hours, they traverse an expansive, empty horizon. The rhythmic movement of their feet, the sweeping, uninterrupted visual field, the profound, overarching silence of nature. This massive spatial transition is not just a journey, it is a vital biological decompression chamber. During this long, quiet physical passage, the brain enters a passive default mode, allowing the cerebrospinal fluid to slowly and naturally wash away the neural ash before they ever reach the communal fire. This is the majestic, deeply ingrained spatial rhythm etched permanently into the core of your DNA. Now, violently snap the pendulum back to the modern era. Look at the brutal architectural reality of your daily existence. You finish a grueling day of complex problem solving inside a tightly sealed concrete office box. You immediately transition into a small metal vehicle box. You navigate terrifying high-speed traffic, forcing your brain to calculate hundreds of lethal variables per minute. You pull into your driveway. You're instantly expected to walk through a wooden door into a domestic box and seamlessly transform into an emotionally available partner and a patient parent. The mismatch is an absolute evolutionary catastrophe. Modern urban infrastructure has completely eradicated the biological buffer zone of the human species. Corporate architects and city planners designed this world for maximum economic efficiency, completely ignoring the rigid metabolic limits of your nervous system. You are a nomadic creature violently forced into a lifestyle of instant neurological teleportation. Your brain is desperately screaming for the vast open savanna to cool down its overheated circuits, but all it gets is a steering wheel, a garage door, and immediate domestic demands. How could you possibly adapt to this architectural nightmare? You deeply believe you are a terrible spouse for wanting to isolate yourself after work, but you're bringing a primal biological need to a hostile geometric prison. You're not fighting your own apathy. You're fighting the crushing structural design of the 21st century. The heavy guilt you feel when you sit frozen in your parked car is not a sign of emotional detachment. It is the brilliant, desperate rebellion of a primal organism trying to artificially simulate the spatial decompression chamber it was violently robbed of. You're completely innocent of this failure. The overwhelming paralysis you feel every single evening is not a personal weakness. It is the majestic, tragic crash of an ancient biological operating system buckling under the crushing architectural weight of a synthetic era it fundamentally cannot comprehend. You are carrying the heavy, unspoken burden of an entire species forced to teleport between high-pressure zones without a single moment of spatial relief. But now, let the grand historical timeline slowly dissolve. Stop the ticking of the evolutionary clock. Silence the deafening roar of the modern highways. Let the camera fall back down from the cold cosmos, descending quietly through the windshield, returning to the absolute physical stillness of your parked car. The history of human infrastructure has finally finished its defense. The architectural data has delivered its unshakable verdict. The science simply no longer matters in this quiet space. The overwhelming architectural disaster slowly fades away. Listen to the absolute silence of this very vehicle. Notice the dust particles drifting aimlessly in the dim light of the dashboard. Feel the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall of your chest against the steering wheel as your lungs expand and collapse. You do not need to analyze your neural friction or track your metabolic waste anymore. You do not need to understand the vast, invisible urban grids that govern the frantic pace of the modern world. All of that immense, crushing structural noise ends right here at the physical edge of your car seat. For years, you have violently forced yourself to step out of this vehicle and immediately perform for the people you love. You deeply believe that instantly transitioning from a corporate problem solver to an emotionally available spouse and an endlessly patient parent was the ultimate mark of a responsible adult. You sincerely thought your desire to just sit in the dark and stare at nothing was a shameful sign that you were failing your family. Let that incredibly heavy, rusted armor of expectation fall to the floor right now. You're not a mechanical device built to instantly teleport between high-pressure zones. You are just a fragile, beautiful, biological organism that desperately needs a decompression chamber. The relentless pursuit of continuous emotional availability is nothing but a cruel societal illusion. You have the undeniable existential right to be completely useless in those delicate moments of transition. The 4-minute mental vacuum ritual is precisely this. It is the brave act of sitting in total silence, with the engine off, the smartphone buried entirely out of sight, and absolutely no external input. In these 4 minutes, you're not meditating, you're not reflecting on your day, you're simply allowing your cerebrospinal fluid to physically wash over the suffocated synapses. You're actively giving your brain the spatial buffer it was violently robbed of by modern architecture. By quietly reclaiming this tiny fraction of silence before you turn the front doorknob, you are not being selfish. You're actively performing the most profound act of human preservation against a massive system meticulously designed to consume your soul. You're bravely choosing to let your own consciousness clean itself on its own natural terms, bathed in the quiet dignity of doing absolutely nothing. Your innate intelligence, your deep emotional energy, and your inner peace are permanently restored, not by adding more complicated relaxation techniques, but by deeply honoring the profound healing emptiness of this transition space. The biology has finally spoken, and the clear path to your existential liberation has been laid out in the quiet darkness of your driveway. The heavy, invisible prison door of domestic expectation is already standing wide open. The only remaining question is what you will quietly choose to do when the engine shuts off and the evening inevitably arrives again. Tomorrow, when you park your car, will you surrender your fragile mind back to the crushing weight of the immediate transition? Or will you fiercely protect the quiet sanctuary of your own mental vacuum? You have successfully secured your decompression chamber. The 4-minute vacuum is yours. But do not let this momentary stillness deceive your logic. The silent ritual effectively washes away the daily chemical sludge, yet it does not explain the terrifying rate at which your brain produces it. Why does your specific prefrontal cortex generate 10 times more analytical waste than the average human being? Why is your biological default mode set to relentless overthinking while the people around you so easily detach? The answer is not in your current environment. It is buried deep in your psychological past. The dark secret lies within the exact intellectual quirks that adults heavily praised you for when you were young. That prestigious label of being the smart, gifted child was never a compliment. It was a silent psychological trap that permanently rewired your nervous system for adult analysis paralysis. You're standing at a critical juncture right now. Will you claim your 4 minutes of silence tonight? Or will you immediately walk inside and let the toxic friction burn out your last remaining neurons? Leave your exact choice in the comments below. Write your decision down to make it a binding physical contract with your own nervous system. You have survived today. But true freedom requires destroying the root cause of the overproduction. How those innocent childhood compliments became your adult cognitive prison, and the exact biological method to finally escape that lifelong paralysis. I will completely dismantle for you in the next video.